Good evening, hello, Ryan Willard here, Director of TTHS Architects and host of the Business of Architecture UK. It's the end of the evening. These are my midnightly musings. It's been a long but wonderful day. And I'm gonna end the day by speaking about intuition and creative flow states. And this week I've been playing around with some poems and poetry, and I enjoy writing. I don't do it that often, but I find it's a very good exercise, particularly in getting yourself into a different way of thinking. And also there's a kind of like, you know, just getting into the flow of something, getting into a stream of ideas and kind of like, you know, you're searching for something. And I like that. And time can disappear in these types of states. And I was talking the other day about, you know, your zone of genius, and when there are certain activities that you will do where you will naturally get into a flow state, and you will naturally become absorbed in whatever it is that you do. And it can be very pleasant. It can be, you know, perhaps it's a sporting activity, or rock climbing, or playing pool, or reading a book, or perhaps it's being creative and playing an instrument or writing. So it's really good to know what these kind of activities are for you, because they can produce and elicit very interesting ideas, and they can be great states for you to synthesize different ideas. So just playing with words, for example, this example of doing bits of poetry, there's a kind of a rhythmical sense to words that when you focus on the words, on the rhythm behind the words, and the shape and the sounds behind the words, and the spaces between the words, this is kind of getting a bit sort of philosophical, metaphorical, whatever, but I find that those types of activities help getting into these interesting flow states where new creative ideas can happen. And sometimes you will feel like, you know, I find when I'm writing that kind of thing, words will just pop out, or it's literally like words are just popping out, and I'm trying to catch them. A similar thing can happen with drawing. So I will often practice drawing by looking at negative spaces. So I'll be drawing only the shapes and the spaces in between things. And again, that helps shift into a different part of the brain where it's quieter sometimes. It's kind of, you can kind of get in touch with that. I'm sure there's sort of scientific namings of this and words, but from a personal experience, drawing negative spaces also, and it can happen very rapidly. You can sit down and you can quickly, you get a physical sensation. You can physically feel what you're visually seeing. So again, it's this kind of crossing over the boundaries of what you would normally perceive, and perceive something else in another way. So with sound, with words, rather than focusing on the words, you're focusing on the contours and the shapes and the rhythms of the words. And with visually looking, you're focusing on negative spaces. So try it as an exercise, because it's very, very, very good. And I suppose one of my sort of passions and interests in creativity is improvisation. And I listen to a lot of jazz. I'm always interested in creative, improvised performing arts. What I'm doing right now is completely improvised. You know, I might have an idea, and you're just kind of letting it flow out. And again, training yourself in improvisation, training yourself to get, you know, the structure behind what allows you to improvise is a very, very useful tool, particularly in conversation. Musicians are masterful improvisers, but for like the discipline of jazz, some of the most structured, and you've got to practice, and you've got to have structures in place, and you've got to know your stuff before you can start improvising on them. So language, for example, all conversation is improvised. So we are improvising creatures. We are constantly in a state of creativity in a conversation. This is why conversation is fascinating. And so jazz and music like that can become different types of conversational arts. I remember once, one of the most beautiful things or experiences I've ever had in life in terms of a kind of group creative exercise was, I used to be in a band and we were having a rehearsal. We used to rehearse a lot, and this was probably after a few years of us rehearsing quite intensely with each other and playing live a lot with each other, that we were able to do this. But one afternoon we were in a rehearsal and I started playing just one note. I think it was an E, and it was digga 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 digga. And I just started playing that, and from that, this entire epic 12 minutes of music came out, and the whole band played this incredible opus of music that we were very, very proud of. And literally, we all just focused in. We went into that space. We played. The lead singer improvised all the lyrics. The bass line came out. The drum came out. Everyone was playing in harmony. And literally, it came out fully formed, a 12-minute long song. And afterwards, we were like, whoa, what was that? Where on earth did that come from? It was really, really exciting. And afterwards, we had to play. Luckily, we used to record all our rehearsals, so we captured the whole thing. But we had to spend a lot of time, maybe a few months even, but certainly some pretty intensive rehearsals to get the backbones out. But we had to figure it out all again, because there were certain moments that just came out that we had to listen to it by ear to try and figure out what it was. Some of it was accidental, so we had to figure out how to recreate those accidents. And it was good, and it was a very interesting process of something improvised and created like that, and then having a lot of discipline and structure to recreate that improvisation. And also, when you start playing it, that we wanted to capture that same sense of generative energy, that same sense of creative energy we wanted to always maintain. And when you're performing and speaking, you want to be generating, you want to be being creative rather than being rehearsed or mechanical. And you can feel that sometimes when you switch off. Anyway, that's flow states and creativity. I think I could talk much, much more about that in future videos.